Think about the last time you were completely alone. No phone, no one watching, no meeting to get to, no message to reply to, just you in a room with nothing to perform. Now ask yourself, did you feel like a different person? Because most people do. There's a version of you that exists only when nobody's watching. And what's strange isn't that that version exists. What's strange is how unfamiliar it sometimes feels. There's a sociologist named Erving Goffman who wrote a book in 1959 called The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. And his central argument was basically this: all social life is performance. Not performance in a fake way, not in a you're being fake way, just structurally. Whenever you're in the presence of other people, you're managing how you come across. You adjust your tone, your posture, what you say, what you leave out. You're presenting a version of yourself appropriate to the scene you're in. Goffman called it front stage and backstage. Front stage is any time you're around others, work, a date, a family dinner. Backstage is the private space where you drop the act, where you stop managing, where you let the version of yourself that nobody gets to see just exist for a while. And when I first read that, my immediate reaction was, yeah, obviously, that's just being a person. You act differently at work than you do at home. You have a school self, a work self, a self you are around your parents versus your friends. That doesn't mean any of those are fake. It just means the self is context sensitive. But here's where it gets interesting. Goffman's insight wasn't really about social media or cameras or the internet. He wrote this in 1959, before all of that, which means the performance is older than the audience. At some point, and nobody really notices when this happens, we internalize the audience. The performance stops being something you do for the people in the room. It becomes something you do for a voice in your head that sounds like every person who has ever watched you, judged you, approved or disapproved of you. Parents, teachers, peers, exes, they all get compressed into this one internal observer that you carry everywhere. And what's unsettling about this is that the internal audience is always watching. There's no backstage anymore. You can be completely alone and still catch yourself performing. You rehearse conversations before they happen. You replay them after. You notice how you're sitting even though nobody's in the room. You catch yourself about to do something and think, how would this look? To who? You're not sure. But the question is there. That internal observer doesn't just watch, it judges. And over time, you start performing, not to impress anyone in the room, but to satisfy that internal voice. To feel like you're being the right kind of person, living the right kind of life. And this is where it stops being just a sociological curiosity and starts being something with real weight. Because that performance, the one for the audience no one else can see, is just exhausting in a way that's hard to explain. You're not performing for anyone, you're just maintaining. I want to talk about a specific version of this that I think is the most dangerous one, and one nobody really names. Sometimes the performance doesn't feel like a performance because the performer isn't really there anymore. You go through the motions, you show up to things, you do what's required, you tick the boxes. From the outside, from the front stage, everything looks fine. Better than fine, maybe. You're functional, you're getting things done, but there's no one home. You're running the performance on autopilot. And the thing about autopilot is that it's actually a very competent operator. It can finish a degree. It can get a job. It can hold a conversation, make plans, meet deadlines. The performance keeps going. What it can't do is feel anything, or notice what's missing, or ask whether any of this is actually what you wanted. I think most autopilot periods start with something we haven't processed. A loss, a breakup, a disappointment that we decided wasn't worth sitting with. And rather than stopping to feel it, which would require dropping the performance, letting the mask slip in front of ourselves, we just keep going. We push the feeling into a corner and turn the autopilot on, and we go. And the performance covers it so well that sometimes you don't even know you're doing it. The tell, for me at least, was realizing I'd achieved things that were supposed to matter to me and felt nothing about them. Not proud, not happy, not relieved, nothing. Because the person who started working towards those things wasn't the person who finished. And the person who finished didn't know why they were doing it anymore. You had already performed your way to the destination. The problem was you weren't there when you arrived. There's something I want to name about the autopilot period that I think explains why it's so easy to stay in for so long. When you're running on autopilot, you're often not performing for the people around you. You're performing for a future version of yourself. The logic goes like this. I just have to get through this, finish the degree, get the job, clear this stretch of difficulty, and then on the other side of all that, the real life begins. Then I get to show up, then I get to be present. I'm just not ready yet. I'll be there later. So you perform for a deferred audience, a future self who will finally arrive once the obligations are met. But the future self never arrives, because the habit of deferral is still running when you get there. There's always another thing to get through, another stage, another performance to complete, before the real thing can start. And when it does finally crack open, when the burnout hits, or the grief surfaces, or you find yourself asking what any of this is actually for, what you're feeling isn't failure. It's the gap between the life you performed and the life you are actually living, and being surprised by how wide that gap got while you weren't looking. Here's something I've been sitting with. Even trained performers, people whose literal job is to become someone else, can't fully perform away who they are. Think about actors, real ones, the kind that inhabit roles completely. There's something that acting teachers call a through line, the consistent quality that an actor brings to every character they play, regardless of the role. You can play a villain, a hero, a broken person, a saint, and if you watch closely, there's a residue. Something that is unmistakably you, in the way you hold tension, in the quality of the stillness you bring, in what your face does when the character is about to break, the self leaks through. And I find this actually significant, because it suggests that the self isn't something you construct through performance, and can just as easily dissolve through it. It's something that persists despite performance. It insists on itself. You can bury it under enough obligation and motion and forward momentum, but it doesn't go away, it just waits. The question isn't whether you have a self underneath the performance. You do. The question is whether you've lost contact with it, whether you can still hear it when it speaks, whether you've been performing so long and so automatically that the witness behind the performance, the part of you that watches and notices and knows the difference, has gone quiet. That's the thing worth paying attention to, not the mask, the silence behind it. I'm not going to tell you that performance is bad, or that you need to stop doing it, or that the goal is to find some pure, unmediated, authentic self underneath everything and just be that. I don't think that's how it works. I think the self and the performance are more intertwined than that. I think some performances are actually worth doing. Some of them teach you things. Some of them pull you toward a version of yourself that hadn't existed yet. But I do think there's a difference between performing deliberately, knowing you're doing it, knowing why, knowing who you are when the curtain comes down, and performing automatically, on schedule, without a witness, until one day you look up and realize you've been running a show you didn't choose, for an audience you can't name, in a life you were too busy performing to actually live. The question I keep coming back to isn't who you are when nobody's watching. It's, are you watching?